according to the Bible, the Earth is only around 6,000 years old. Is there any evidence to support that?
Indeed there is.
All right, let's see it.
The population of the world today is about 8 billion people. Do you know if you start with 6 people, Shem, Ham and Japheth, Noah's 3 sons and their 3 wives, and let that population grow at the rate of about 0.5%, which is very conservative, for 4,500 years, that's how long ago the flood was, we get 8 billion. So the Bible's record of history is exactly consistent with the population of the world.
No, it's not, because the world population has grown at a rate of about 0.04% from around 10,000 BCE to around 1700 CE, at which point it started to increase, and it topped out in 1964 at 2.24%. So here you can see the world population in green. You see it taking off after the middle of the 20th century. That is the introduction of vaccines. That is the infant mortality rate plummeting. You can see the annual growth rate of the world population in the pink line, and that spikes in this chart in 1962/63, and then it drops off. The world population growth is actually on the decline. You can see the light green on the right side of this chart. That's projection into the future. Many scholars think that the population of the Earth will actually spike in about 60 years and then begin to decline. Not just the population growth, but the actual population itself, somewhere around 11 billion people. So no, the biblical notion of the history of the world is not even remotely consistent, much less exactly consistent with the population of the world. It does not fit at all, because there are no data that support the notion that the Earth is only 6,000 years old.
We find soft tissue in dinosaur bones, showing that they cannot be millions of years old.
Now, here's the beginning of the article from a 2005 issue of Science announcing that soft tissue was discovered in the hind limb of a Tyrannosaurus rex. Here's how a scientist approaches these new data rather than an ideologue, about halfway down after the parenthetical 3. These data indicate that exceptional morphological preservation in some dinosaurian specimens may extend to the cellular level or beyond. If so, in addition to providing independent means of testing phylogenetic hypotheses about dinosaurs, applying molecular and analytical methods to well-preserved dinosaur specimens has important implications for elucidating preservational microenvironments and will contribute to our understanding of biogeochemical interactions at the microscopic and molecular levels that lead to fossilization. And 8 years later, research and data have contributed to a new theoretical model for how those microenvironments can contribute to the preservation of soft tissue after such long periods of time, and it has to do with the role of iron and oxygen chemistry,
including the presence of carbon-14 in dinosaur bones.
We already know why there is carbon-14 in dinosaur bones, and it does not complicate in any way, shape, or form whatsoever the well-established fact that they are tens and even hundreds of millions of years old.
Once again, consistent with an age of only a few thousand years.
Not really consistent. There are some results that would fit within a young Earth timeline, but the majority of the results are into the several thousands of years old and even tens of thousands of years old. So even if those C14 results were considered accurate and reliable, it would not fit a young Earth creationist timeline. So the difference between a scientific approach to these data and an apologetic approach to these data is a scientist is going to allow the data to operate on their own terms, and they're going to follow the data where they lead. An apologist already knows where they need to arrive at, and the data becomes an obstacle that needs to be overcome. And they have to try to make a case that the data are not an obstacle, but they're making that case to people who already agree and who want to believe. And so they don't actually have to make a compelling case, they just have to show that it's not impossible. And as long as they can gin up the tiniest little sliver of not impossible for those people who already agree to hold on to, they can feel validated in their agreement. And that is the entire goal of apologetics. It's not to convince people who actually allow the data to operate on their own terms and follow the data where they lead. It's to make people who already want to believe feel validated in that belief.